Morning, councillors, EXO, directors, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start, let's acknowledge the fact that this wonderful place that we call home has seen a human occupation dating back around 60,000 years, and in our region it's mainly represented by the Iwi people. So when we come together as a council, we pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and those emerging, and recognise their continuous custodianship of this land. So this meeting is being recorded and streamed live and recorded and will be published in accordance with the Council's standing orders. So welcome to our online audience, welcome to our members of the public gallery who are here today. I draw your attention to the top right-hand corner of the screen, and by being here today you're consenting to the fact that your vision will be recorded and published. If you speak, that will also be recorded and published. We're also required to tell you that you may be subject to legal action if your actions or comments are deemed inappropriate or unacceptable. So thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. Declare the meeting open. And our April prayer today, the Reverend Wayne McHugh. Reverend McHugh, you're first time to council, so welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Let's pray together. Loving God, as this council pauses to pray before business today, we ask you to hear this prayer. There is a great deal of business to be considered here today in this very diverse community that has very many needs, some of which conflict with each other. We pray for the wisdom to rightly balance economic and human need between those things that can be profitably pursued and those that can or must be justly pursued. Each person gathered here around this table has been elected by the people of this region to lead with integrity and skill. Lord God, may the many skills present in this room be put to the very best use this day. It is the greater Mackay region that's being served here today, so we pray for all the people of our region, the young right through to the aged, those well and unwell, those prospering and those who do not have enough. Lord God, your word tells us that all leadership is ultimately from you and accountable to you. May the people of this region be led well here today, and you be honoured by these council members as they do their work today. We pray it in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thanks very much, Reverend McHugh. Like councillors absent on council business, note the CEO is absent today. He's representing council at a local government managers conference in Cairns. Apologies. No condolences. Any condolences, councillors? No condolences. Any conflicts of interest to declare? No conflicts of interest to declare. Councillor Hassan, are you saying that item 11.5.5, the bus shelter, you'll declare a conflict here? Okay, so that item you'll step out. Thank you. Right, anything else? Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of the 24th of July, the ordinary meeting of the 24th of July. Somebody move that they be adopted. Councillor Jones moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried, thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the 7th of August, which was the special meeting of the 7th of August. Somebody move that they be adopted. Councillor Christensen moves, seconded by Councillor Mackay. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. No business arising out of those, or if it is, it's included in here. There's no mirror minutes today, so let's move on to the consideration of committee reports and recommendations. 10.1, the Mackay Local Disaster Management Group, the LDMG minutes of the meeting of the 17th of June. I think it's pretty well straightforward. Any questions around that? Interesting to note that there's $256 million of funding over the next 10 years being allocated via the Bureau of Meteorology, and that's funding to procure by the Bureau some of the flood warning infrastructure, which has been owned by councils up and down the Queensland coast, including us. And so they've identified some of the high priority catchment areas. Pioneer and the Plank Creek catchment areas are involved in that. So there'll be significant money spent over the next 10 years on either upgrading or acquiring those flood warning infrastructures that we've put in, so which is good. Any further questions? No further questions? I'll move that we adopt the minutes, or we receive the minutes, seconded by Councillor May. Any debate? I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. So, for the first time, we're going to have our reports today from some of the Strategic Advisory Committee. The draft minutes at 10.2 of the Economic Development and Growth Strategic Advisory Committee. That meeting was held on the 19th of July. Are there questions associated with that? Councillor Corowa, question?
Thank you, Your Worship. 10.2 of the Economic Development and Growth Strategy Advisory Committee, just a question around page 13.5.2. Around post-event impact assessments include measurable objective feedback to council such as operational efficiency and tangible community benefit. The question is just around how does that outcome report template or any acquittal obligations allow for measurable data collection in that regard, that's all. So how is it being collated, how is it being identified?
How is it being collated and then reported back? So Councillor Mackay, can you answer that? Or will you take that on notice?
Yeah, if I can take that on notice, I just realised that'll leave us minutes today.
Okay, yep. So we'll take that on notice and publish it to you and the rest of the council together. Any other questions? Councillor Sheedy?
Your Worship, I see the next proposed meeting is September 2024, and I guess I've got an interest in, as a new councillor, in all of the advisory committees, and I'd just like to understand the arrangements by which a councillor such as me could get to observe the other committee meetings from time to
Just
time.
take it under the chair of the committee.
All right.
Simple as that.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, so no further questions. Councillor Mackay, would you like to move?
Yes, I'll move.
Seconder, Councillor Hassan. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge our Director, Alita, and her staff in the ED department for all their work in getting our committee off the ground. Invitations were sent out to our 10 community stakeholders, and it was positively received and well supported. As our Mayor has stated, these are our first minutes for our first stakeholder meeting. And I just wanted to highlight a couple of items from these minutes. Our Director, Alita, shared with our members that their strategic input will be valuable with some of our major projects, like our economic development strategy, our placemaking strategy, and our Mackay City and waterfront investment. A point discussed is that as a committee we need to minimise overlap between what our committee does and the work being undertaken by other committees outside of council. It was discussed that it would be a benefit for us to have a single economic development roadmap that all relevant stakeholders can endorse instead of each organisation having their own. Tiona gave our members a presentation on Invest Mackay, and some good constructive feedback was given and taken on board to work through. We are continuing to work on our events calendar, and improvements in the back end will come to our next meeting. And our final part of the meeting was that each community stakeholder, they got to share and give us an update on their current projects, which can be seen in these minutes. And there's great things happening across our region, and I look forward to our continued work with our committee and community stakeholders.
Thanks, Councillor Mackay. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? Councillor Hassan, speaking for.
Just backing up what Councillor Mackay said, and also like to, as one of our newly elected councillors, think Councillor Mackay did a great job of chairing the meeting. I believe it was her first time chairing a meeting at all, and it was just really great to see so much buy-in from our stakeholder group, so looking forward to continuing the work of that.
Thanks, Councillor Hassan. Any other speakers? All right, so we're not only receiving the minutes, but we're also accepting the recommendation of the Economic Development and Growth Strategic Advisory Committee at item 5.2 and endorsing the revised Invest Mackay Events and Conference Attraction Program funding guideline guarantees shown in attachment 2. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.3, the Livability and Social Inclusion Strategic Advisory Committee. Their draft minutes are tabled for us today. Are there any questions? No questions? Right, so who wants to move this? Is it Councillor May or Councillor Johnson? Councillor Johnson? Councillor May, right, thank you. Is there a second? Councillor Johnson, Councillor May.
Let's hope so. Thank you very much, Your Worship. So it is, I think, an exciting time for Council to be embarking upon these strategic advisory committees and having the minutes come to the Council meeting for not just the councillors to see, but also the general public to see the areas that we've been focusing on. So we've spent the first couple of meetings really looking into some of the activities that Council has been undertaking through the Community Services Department under the direction of our Director, Janine Mackay. And as you can see from the two lots of Council meeting minutes there is a vast majority of things underway or being considered. So we've chosen at this point in time not to have external members on that committee until we really get abreast of the actions and activities that the committee would like to look into. So you can see from the minutes that we've looked into some of the high-level sports activities and actions that have happened, the library and the library strategy that's being developed. So there's a whole range of things in that livability component of and social inclusion that is really important. So we're just taking that little bit of time to fully understand and get ahead of what's happening, and then we will, towards the end of this year, make an assessment of who are the community members we will invite to be part of our stakeholder group. So,
Thanks, Councillor May. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Johnson speaking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment and echo what Deputy Mayor May has said, and really thank the SLT team, so Janine and her managers, for how they've developed the committee alongside us as co-chairs and all the work that has gone through there. And I also wanted to mention a project that the committee is working on, which is the North Queensland Games that is set to come to Mackay in 2026. We've been working alongside the North Queensland Sports Foundation to prepare everything to see what sports are able to have the opportunity to compete in this region, and also attracting visitors to showcase this beautiful region we live in. I'm really looking forward to how this committee evolves over the term, and thank you again.
Thanks very much, Councillor Johnson. Any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion is carried. The Regional Infrastructure Strategic Advisory Committee, their draft minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of August. Are there questions? Any questions? Councillor Ballard, you'd like to move? Is there a seconder? Councillor Hassan. Councillor Ballard.
It's with considerable pleasure I present the minutes of the inaugural Regional Infrastructure Strategic Advisory Committee. It's a concept that I've fought for over the last two terms, and I thank the CEO, the Executive Officer, Director and others for their work in providing this opportunity. To explain advisory committees, strategic advisory committees, best to use an analogy, we're not so much concerned about the pothole, but rather the state of the road network, our ability to maintain a standard, ongoing of supply of material, drainage, legislation, etc. All of those things that go in, which ultimately should see less potholes. While it's about providing a path to the wider community to the wider council for our community, it's also extremely important in evaluating legislation, regulation, economic impacts, and how they affect both our operations and our people. This is particularly important at the moment in waste. We're looking both up, down, left and right, but most importantly into the future to anticipate, evaluate, inform and act upon whatever may be pertinent. I need at this time to specifically correct some misinformation regarding this particular committee. Councillor appointed as Deputy Chair of this committee tendered a resignation less than 24 hours prior to our inaugural meeting. The email was then shared on social media. A couple of quotes: the Infrastructure Advisory Committee has no external representation. No real point to this committee, given the entire purpose of the strategic committees, as they saw it, was to engage the community. These statements may well have been better informed should Councillor Christensen have attended the formative discussions. Even a cursory perusal of the agenda, which was available 2 days prior to the Councillor's resignation, would have brought the fact that an external community organisation was presenting at the meeting to the fore. It was decided at the prior discussions that the committee structure would be restricted to 3 members, 2 councillors and the director, with expert advisors and public submitters being called as relevant. This was due to the considerable array of stakeholder groups, and to choose some over others would be unfair and probably not pertinent, run the risk of making the committee less agile with regard to current issues at the time, and committee members may have had little interest if the issue was not of their bailiwick, their particular interest. However, we do have the opportunity for public representation. The 2 remaining committee members met on site with a community member to discuss not only the roads in his area, but also the state of emergency bypass routes throughout our region. At the first meeting, the RAG presented a concept they are working on. It was meant to be the role of councillors as members to be present in the community for a considerable proportion of their time and directly available to the community to discuss issues and evaluate whether it warranted presentation at the advisory committee or whether another path was appropriate. This was the manner in which RAG gained access, and as an aside, I'd asked whether a short period on a briefing day could be provided for the advisory committee to present further inform the wider council regarding the RAG presentation and what they're working on. The advisory committee also discussed the regional waste strategy prior to its presentation to council. This discussion covered any number of areas such as the pros and cons of FOGO, the impact of decreasing rebate on state government's waste levy, the ramifications of an 80% target for the reduction of waste to landfill, and where we saw the disposal of waste being in 10, 20 and 30 years into the future. It covered the differing drivers impacting each of the 3 concerned councils, Isaacs, Whitsunday and ourselves. In the future, we'll investigate any number of things, including but not limited to the bridge network and ramifications of a lack of expertise available with regard to timber bridges, ageing underground infrastructure and future planning for replacement. These are not the glamorous ribbon-cutting architectural award-winning edifices, but are the actual lifeblood of both our daily lives and our industries. So I would state categorically, contrary to the assertion made in the resignation email, there is a very real point to this committee. It will evolve, get over some teething issues, as Councillor May stated in the case of hers, and become a valuable instrument for staff, elected members and our community. This, however, will require time, commitment to the concept and a willingness not to judge from afar, but to be actually present here in our region and be an integral and positive part of this process. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ballard. Speaker against? Any other speakers? Councillor Sheedy speaking for.
Yeah, just a question if I may. Your Worship, I noticed on page 40 about the National Heavy Vehicle Regulation state that heavy vehicle rest stops must be available every 90 kilometres. There's no heavy vehicle rest stop exists north of Waverley Creek, that's 160 kilometres south of Mackay. That's concerning. The other question is in relation to rest areas. It's mentioned that expected that the Mackay Regional Council would need to maintain the site once developed, and need to ensure that Department of Transport and Main Roads is involved in any discussion. I'm just, I guess, questioning about maintenance funding. Did that sort of, from Councillor Ballard, did that sort of fit?
Ask some questions at the start, Councillor Sheedy. That's the time. We'll take those on note and we'll get that answered via the committee, unless you can answer it now, Councillor Ballard.
I was going to say that this is exactly the reason, if a presentation had been listened to, that I requested the 15 minutes to brief council with regard to that. Apart from that, it is not directly council's responsibility to undertake that sort of thing, and I will elaborate, as will the director, further in that period.
Thank you.
Thanks, Your Worship.
Any other speakers? No other speakers, I'll put that motion then. Those in favour? Any against? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Correspondence and officers' reports, 11.1.1. 11.1 is the Mayor and the CEO reports. 11.1 is my report as tabled. Any questions? No questions? There's no questions. I'll move the report. Would somebody like to second? Councillor Jones seconds. Any discussion? I'll put that motion then. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried. Thank you. 11.1.2, the CEO's monthly review report for July. The EXO is going to present this report. EXO.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So it's with pleasure that I'm, in the absence of the CEO, I'm presenting his report for July. Whilst it's very comprehensive, I'd just like to call out a couple of different points. Psychological safety is obviously a growing area within current workplaces. It's something that we have a major focus on. In actual fact, it will be front and centre of our safety and wellbeing staff expo that's occurring next week. Mackay again hosted a very successful QME, Queensland Mining and Engineering Exhibition event this year. Major economic boost for the region, and just an acknowledgement to the staff involved with coordinating that and the liaison with the event. July saw the hosting of the Rocky Trail Entertainment Fox Superflow event at the Finch-Hatton Mountain Bike Trails. Again, a major achievement and a major promotion for the facility that we built there. And finally, as a highlight, part of the Mackay Festival of Arts, the Wisely Wine and Food Day was again very popular. Tens of thousands of people attended on the day. And again, a call out to particularly the MEC and event staff who lead that, but also the other areas within council that assist with that coordination. Otherwise, I think it's a very comprehensive report, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thanks. EXO, questions on the CEO's report? Councillor Sheedy.
Your Worship, on pages 58 and 59, I just noticed that there's a fairly significant difference in the vacancies on page 58. Mention of 145, and page 59 in July there were 177 vacant positions. Just which is the relevant figure? Most relevant.
EXO.
Just trying to see what you're referring to, sorry, Councillor. On page 58, it's which number?
145.
Total active vacancies, is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
145.
Yep. And then on page 59, there's a mention there were 177 vacant positions.
So, through Your Worship, I think the difference there is the first one's total active vacancies. So they would be ones that we were actively recruiting, which is the 145 number. 177 is our total vacancies. So the difference would obviously be the ones at this point in time we're not actively looking to recruit for a variety of different reasons. It could well be that we've already been out before and are having a pause for a while to hit the market again, or we're yet to get into that campaigning. But so one of them is active vacancies, and the other one's total vacancies.
Further questions? Councillor Christensen.
Yes, just regarding the psychological safety awareness program. I've noticed mentioned that there's going to be strategies explored for robust procedures and also compliance measures. I understand that councillors and councillors here are going to undertake that psych safety workshop coming in the future. I'm just wondering, what is the timeline for the rollout of the measures, such as the procedures, the compliance measures, and will they incorporate council as well as in this body?
I might start if that's right, Worship, and then maybe the director would like to take over. So yes, you're correct, we have some initial training coming up with councillors next week. We've had preliminary training sessions for ELT and SLT within council. As I mentioned before, the Safety and Wellbeing Day next week is part of the introduction of the training, if you like, or the process or the idea to staff generally. And then we've planned a rollout. These things, I suppose, is best described that we're at the start of the journey for the rollout, and we've got that planned out initially, a variety of different levels, including particularly supervisors within council and the management of work areas. But I don't know whether the director wanted to add anything to that.
Yes, Your Worship. So we've had to reach out to the likes of LGAQ to seek some advice around councillors and whether they're covered by council policies. We're very much in our infancy in this journey, so I'm happy to report back to council once I know.
Thank you.
So, Your Worship, just on that matter, a very brief comment. I understand that other councillors have just in recent days discovered that other councils do have these policies that sort of looks to go a bit further than the code of conduct, dealing with behaviour, with intimidating behaviour, with bullying behaviour, which I think that would be something this council should look at.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Sheedy?
Your Worship, there's mention there under community engagement on page 62, the Paradise and Webley Street intersection upgrade, and also further down there about the Northern Beaches Community Hub. They're two fairly significant capital projects. Just a question as to how they're travelling. And I did notice, there's the financial report later in the piece, but if we could have some comment about whether they're on track and on budget.
Thanks, Adam. We answer that.
Through you, Your Worship, that page is actually in relation to the consultation, but the director looks like he might be ready to answer a couple of those.
Yeah, certainly through Your Worship.
So this is community engagement, but you've got a question around the actual project itself. So, okay, accept that.
So just on Northern Beach Community Hub, that's in relation to stage 1A, the multi-purpose facility. That's certainly currently on budget and on time to be delivered, and same with Paradise Webley. They were both major projects that went across financial years.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No further questions. Would somebody like to move the adoption of the CEO's report for July? Councillor Christensen moves. Councillor Jones seconds. Councillor Christensen?
Nothing further, Your Worship.
There's no further debate. Then I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried. Unanimous. Thank you. All right. 1.1.3. Amendment to council meeting dates. So this is a fairly perfunctory agenda item, councillors. So we have to change the October meeting because it falls right in the midst of the LGAQ conference. So we just need to move that. The November meeting remains as scheduled. We need to reschedule as we do at the end of the year so that we can roster on some time over the Christmas period to alter the December meeting and the January meeting. So the December meeting to the 11th of December, the January meeting to the 29th of January. Are there any questions? No questions? Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Christensen moves. Councillor May seconds. Councillor Christensen?
No, you've explained it, Your Worship.
I'll put that motion then. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Leave of absence for Councillor Hassan, 11.1.4. I think that's pretty well straightforward that the meeting, under the provisions of 160B of the Local Government Act, endorses Councillor Hassan's application for leave without pay for the period as a candidate for the Queensland State election, with such leave to commence, as requested from the close of business day, Friday the 20th of September, until the conclusion of the election. Are there any questions? No questions? Would somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Mackay. Councillor May? There's no debate. I'll put that motion in. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, there's a report on 11.1.5 for Councillor Jones' attendance at the LJQ Coastal Forum. I was at that forum as well, but I was a panel member of that forum. That's a good report, Councillor Jones. Is there anything further you want to add to this?
You want to speak to it?
Yes, we'll ask for questions first. Any questions? You'd like to move, Councillor Jones, the acceptance of the report. Somebody likes to second. Councillor Hassan seconds. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. As is when any of us attend a conference, it's important that the money spent on us attending these conferences allows us to come back with information that benefits our community. And certainly this conference was no different. As you can see in the report, I've put down a number of things that were pertinent. But in summary, I thought that being that our region talks about renewables at the moment, in the conference they actually spoke about how renewables should give back to the community, and some of the examples that were given were some international examples. One in particular was about, in the USA, Texas is the biggest renewable state in the US and has the most wind farms. And it's interesting to find that they recycle their wind farm blades by crushing them down and putting them into road base. So that was a good source of data, being able to look at that, Your Worship. The other thing is reef protection. At a local level, it was discussed around some $17 million worth of funding that's been previously provided to councils across Queensland, as a result of the soon-to-be implemented reef plan, it's anticipated that the Australian government might be trying to fund some projects into the future. So I guess at the end of the day, for me, making connections with people there was also important. And one of them was certainly to do with Emma Schofield from Q Coast 2100, which is all part and parcel of that process. So she now knows that we're certainly going to be looking for future funding to help us implement our CHAS. And the other one, Your Worship, and you were there for this session, was to do with the reinsurance scheme. Our community struggle with the costs of insurances in our region, and the reinsurance scheme, or the pool, is very new to everybody. It's still not at full capacity, but it'll be finalised at the end of this year. But already there are 16 insurance companies signed up for it, and the biggest thing that Jason Flanagan, who was part of that particular session, said to me later, the biggest problem they have is trying to get the word out. So we need to be able to tell our community that when you're insuring your property, you must ask the insurance salesperson if they are linked with the reinsurance scheme. And if they are, then there should be savings coming to you. So, yeah, I found that very valuable. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Speaker against. Any other speakers?
Yes.
Councillor Christensen.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. Yes, just a comment on the reinsurance pool. It's very good to see Councillor Jones in particular that this issue is kept alive at the various forums that local government is involved in. I know that Mackay Regional Council, Your Worship, is taking forward this matter to the Local Government Association conference later this year. It is a big issue that's impacting our residents. And while it's good to see that Mr Flanagan does expect a 50 to 70% reduction, I'm not so certain of that. But as I met in Canberra quite recently with the member for Kennedy, Bob Catter, who's obviously a big voice for all of North Queensland, and he said to me something which is very poignant about this scheme, and that is that we actually have the dashboard there in front of us. It's now a matter of, fine-tuning the dials to find out how far we can actually drive down premiums. So I think that certainly has to be a top-of-mind issue for the bodies that we are part of, such as this body and the LGAQ.
Thanks, Councillor Christensen. Any other speakers? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to give a personal note. I've recently actually had a look at redoing my insurance, and I spoke to a broker, and I made sure that I mentioned, can you ask the company that you're looking at if they are part of the reinsurance pool? And it turns out that the price that I got, he couldn't better, because obviously the reinsurance pool was taken into consideration in the insurance that I ultimately went with, and again, just alerted him more and more to the fact that this reinsurance pool is available and people should be, asking about it.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Any other speakers? No other speakers. I'll put that motion then. Those in favour? Any against? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. There's a report at 11.1.6 from my attendance. The CEO and I attended the National General Assembly of the Australian Local Government Conference. I don't think I can add too much more than what's in the report. Are there any questions? No questions? I'll move the adoption of the report then. Is there a seconder? Councillor May seconds. If there's anything to speak to it. The Australian Local Government Association is representative of the 532 councils in Australia, but they represent it through our state organisations. It's a difficult thing to try and bring together varying states the way that they actually administer and govern their local governments. We're not all the same, so it's a very difficult thing to do representative nationally. but it was a worthwhile conference, I thought, for the number of the great speakers that we attended. So I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. So the 2024 Local Government Association Conference of Queensland. This is a very, very important conference, and I'm so glad to see that there's 7 representatives from our council nominated to go. And it's the formative conference for representation to the state government of the 77 councils in Queensland. And so this motion that's before you today is for endorsing Mayor and Deputy Mayor as the council delegates, and for Councillors Christensen, Gorowa, Johnson, Pray and Sheedy to attend, which is a great representation from this council. Are there questions around this? No questions? Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor May?
Just to reiterate what you've just said, it's really great to see our newly elected councillors putting their hand up to attend. I think in the early part of your local government council commitments, having that grounding of being able to be part of the LGAQ conference, because it is a door opener, I suppose, for a whole range of connections to be made across the state. And our council itself has 5 motions to this particular conference, so it'll be great to have a contingent of Mackay councillors attending. So,
Thank you very much. Speaking against? Are there any other speakers? I'll put that motion then. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to organisation, capability and risk. 11.2.1 is the Ops Quarterly Plan for the 4th quarter of 2023-24. Mackay.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. So again, on behalf of the CEO, I'm happy to provide a summary of the report, noting that it's the quarterly report for the end of June, so essentially the report for 23-24. When we get to the specifics, it's obviously representative of all the departments, so any particular questions. Just as a summary, the op plan had 51 actions. Of those, 33 were met, 1 was exceeded, and 17 of those are ongoing. Just it's interesting to note that the operational plan, unlike budgets, etc., is adopted once throughout the year, not necessarily updated. So understandably then, when things change throughout the year, including, for example, situations that we've had with the MEC, it's hard to meet those targets accordingly. However, of the 17 that haven't yet been finalised as of the 30th of June, the majority of them are well in hand and are still being worked on. So again, I'd be happy to answer any questions or defer to the various departments.
Thanks very much, XO. Questions on the Ops plan? Councillor Christensen.
Yeah, it's half been answered by the XO, and appreciate the CEO's not here, so this may be something that has to be taken on notice, Your Worship. But there are rather a lot of yellow light indicators, and I won't refer to any particular item, but it's just worrying in the first quarter to open up the operational report and see that we're already not meeting certain things. Appreciate that some issues such as that are the reason for it, but what's pleasurable is that there's no red lights there, and what I just want to get a handle on is, in terms of each one of these, or holistically, are we concerned that this array of yellow lights could slip into red, or are we doing now what we can to get back into the green?
So, can you answer that?
Yeah, well, it's probably just to clarify one point. This is the quarterly report for the 4th quarter. So this is the end report for 23-24.
Right.
Yeah, so this is the summary report for the whole of 23-24. Council has adopted the 24-25 operational plan as part of the budget process. So the reporting that we've got here, whilst it's the quarterly report for the 4th quarter, is actually the summary for the year.
Right.
And one of the explanation that I had there was Council adopts that at this point in time. Once at the start of the year is the plan that we're going to do. And unlike budgets that we amend quarterly, we don't historically do that for the operational plan. So there would be a number of items in there around, for example, the entertainment centre, some of them around resourcing in one or two different departments that we've had some issues with, and we don't adjust those throughout the year. So again, of the 17 that haven't been met, they weren't met at the target that we expected to have at the end of the year, but they're still, we don't just drop them and not do them anymore. They continue to be operated on, and if they were ones that would be significant for the 24-25 year, they would have been retabled in that document.
You know, I guess just to follow on from that, when the next quarterly report drops, should we expect that a lot of these issues will be resolved, bar one such as the NEC, where there's an ongoing issue?
That's generally what we would be expecting.
Yeah, so through your worship, so any items that were identified as important for us to carry on and or the council important to carry on would have been picked up again in the 24-25 year. But some of these may well have already at this point in time be finalised. It's just reported on the 30th of June.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Just a question for the EXO. So it relates to the KPI regarding building the Connecting Mackay active panel member numbers. So it's page 14 of the report and 123 for the agenda. My question is, the comment relates to the usage of panels being less with our engagement with projects. But I just wanted to clarify, have we actually grown our panel members on Connecting Mackay? I just have concerns around it, considering what we are doing to attract new community members to be engaging in projects, especially that this is our main tool of communication.
So, or Director?
Your Worship, the failed to meet targets there was more a reflection of the fewer projects coming up through last year. So through those panels we engage on specific projects. With the absence of so many projects coming through, just from the nature of last year being the election year, there was less than anticipated use of those panels, so we saw less engagement through them.
So to carry on from that question then, so I think
How are we attracting new panel numbers for the KPI growth of 10%?
We've certainly got that emphasis to build those panels up through the engagement on projects. It's certainly a focus ongoing.
How are we doing that, Director?
I might refer to Mrs. Lehman for that. How we're engaging more.
Have we got a corporate comms plan to do that?
Yes, so we've done some active promotion around the Connecting Mackay website, but we didn't have any projects to engage panels. We have some upcoming projects which we will be engaging, so we'll be going out to the existing panel members and also just to renew and revigor those, and then we'll also be putting the call out for more panel members to achieve that growth, so it'll be ongoing in this financial year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Further questions? Would somebody like to move the adoption, receiving the operational plan, the quarterly report for the last quarter of 23-24. Councillor Christensen moves, seconded by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Christensen. Okay, I think are there any speakers to this debate? Okay, I'll put that motion in. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, 11.3.1 is the systematic dog and cat inspection program. So we've had briefings about this. This is a fairly comprehensive report. Director, is there something else that you can lead in with this? Yeah.
The report seeks council approval as is required under state legislation and Management Act and also through our local law in order for our officers to undertake an inspection program, the purpose of which is to build that compliance with the state law and local laws requiring the registration of cats. The program is proposed between October and December and to be integrated with officers' business as usual work in order to keep the cost of the program, the impact on resources to a minimum. The plan is to target properties where there is obvious there is a dog or cat residing and yet our systems show no evidence of a registration at that property. In the first instance, simply leaving sort of documentation, a letter in the letterbox of that property. If required, further follow-up work would then be undertaken, potentially entering the property via the front yard to knock on the door and approach the resident and have that further conversation about the requirements, potentially issuing fines or further compliance notices from that point. There's no intention to enter inspect any backyards or anything like that. It's simply approaching the front door with a door knock if required as a follow-up to the initial. Improving the registration rates means less of a cost burden is borne by the general ratepayer for the animal management program. We have between 2,000 and 3,000 requests per year for a range of animal management related issues, be it barking dogs, wandering dogs, dog attacks, and we've seen some very serious dog attacks in our community. And so it's about having the cost of that program borne by the animal owners through the registration process.
Thanks, Director. So, Exo, we're this process has been followed elsewhere.
Yeah, so thank you, Your Worship. So just for reference, there's another 13 councils in Queensland that we're aware of that have recently undertaken a similar sort of program. Places like Rockhampton, Gladstone, and even closer to home, Isaac. Just for reference, granted it hasn't happened for a period of time, but this organisation used to run this program on a regular basis. And as the Director mentioned, it was simply just a check, if you like, of registration details in relation to properties that what obviously had an animal there but no registration. So correct, this organisation used to do this a number of years ago, and it's not uncommon. We're aware of 13 councils in Queensland over the last couple of years that have done something similar.
All right, other questions? Councillor Jones.
The EXO has actually just answered one of my questions, but I just wanted to be really, really clear that the knock on the door doesn't mean that you are entering a person's physical house. Thank you.
No, I mean, knocks on the door,
It's just
anybody can do that.
Yeah.
And certainly our officers, as with Queensland Police, Queensland Fire, all of those, you're entitled to knock on the door. Councillor Mackay.
Just to clarify, but it does give our officers the authority to go into a person's property in the yard and the outside of the property in the back.
Sorry, Director.
Your Worship, the powers that the officers have under this inspection program would be to enter the property, not the dwelling. So there's to enter a dwelling house requires a warrant. We don't seek that power. It's absolutely not necessary, nor is it necessary for our officers to enter the backyard of the property. We're simply observing. Oftentimes it will be just from potentially walking past the property and seeing if there's an animal there and checking against our registration details. So there's no forced entry. There's no need for us to enter any of the backyard, although the powers under this program do allow for that. In many instances we have powers. It's not in our interest from an officer safety perspective or in disturbance of privacy of residents for us to do that. It is not necessary under this program.
Other questions? Other questions? Councillor Sheedy?
I had a phone call from a person who was fairly passionate about the connection that people have with their pets and animals, and that concern was that, well, I guess what some people had read into what they've seen in the agenda, and that is that that our officers could be, sort of entering properties, and in that case could be exposing themselves to, some danger and harm from people who have this, sort of deep passion and protection of their dearly beloved animals, and just that we need to be conscious of that, and I guess that the staff are duly trained and prepared for what they might encounter in those situations.
Is there a question, Councillor Sheedy?
Yeah, and I'm taking from the director's nodding response that the training, would be appropriate to that situation.
Through the chair, our authorised officers are trained and they do deal, unfortunately, with some high complex situations, and that is why this program is very much designed to be done as fairly passive surveillance, where and with the officer safety top of mind.
Further insight?
Maybe we should probably just to reinforce the director's comments there. We all have a lot of powers in relation to authorised persons, guards, etc., but you don't use those powers unless you're actually required to do so. The reality in this case is for us to undertake this, the Act says that we actually have to pass a resolution accordingly, and that just covers us off if there's any issues similar to the authorisations that others hold.
Right, Councillor Mackay.
So just one further question, just for my own, just to get clarification. So I understand that there's an intent not to go into a person's surrounding property, but this is actually allowing that.
The provision in the Animal Management Act allows the officers to enter the property, not with force, but enter the property, yes. With the officer safety in mind, our officers will be instructed not to do that. In the first instance, they'll be leaving a letter. In the second instance, it will be a door knock to be in contact with the person residing in the property to ask those questions. And then potentially a notice to comply following that and through the enforcement process.
So Councillor Mackay, the State Act allows access. We're not passing this access here. All we're doing is giving our officers, under a local law, we're just giving our officers some backup. There's no intent to invade anybody's privacy, and our officers, you won't do that because you're putting officers in danger. So there's no intent to do anything other than, as stated right at the start, make sure that we've got an even distribution of the costs of running our animal management system across our dog owners. And then particularly for the barking dog complaints, particularly for the dangerous dog complaints that we get on a regular basis. It's a nice tune, but it better be turned off. We get hundreds of complaints a year, and unless our officers have got some backup as to being able to go to that property and find out if the dog is registered or not, then we might as well not have anything. So this is all that's doing. It's just giving our officers some backup. The state law actually allows them to go onto a property. Councillor McRae.
Just in response to Mayor, so at the moment, our officers have the power to go to, they receive a complaint, and the process is they go and investigate that at someone's house about their animal. So that's already in existence. So I feel this is going a step further, because this is giving them now, without a complaint, they can go to a property and investigate into someone's property if there's an animal there that is not registered.
We have a requirement for dogs and cats, but dogs particularly, to be registered. We don't have compliance around that area. So we either have dogs registered or we don't. Or we spread the cost of animal management across all ratepayers, and that includes ratepayers who don't have a dog. So this is simply to say, are we having a fair and equitable distribution of the costs of running our animal management services in this region over the people who actually use the services, or people in the street who are upset by barking dogs or dangerous dogs or dogs on the loose. So that's all this is doing over a set period of time, saying we're doing an audit of the district, and if your dog's not registered, it should be, so that we can spread them. This is not power. This is not giving officers anything other than protection to be able to go and do that. Right.
Yes, through the worship, Your Worship, we anticipate only about half property owners register their pets, or about half the pets registered. But certainly that shows through the dealings our local law officers have, that only about half are registered. So it's fairly low numbers.
All right. So the officer's recommendation that in accordance with the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act of 2008, which is a state act, and the Local Government Act of 2008, Council approves 2 systematic inspection programs to be undertaken between 1 October 24 and 31 December 24 for all properties within the Mackay regional area where a dog or a cat has not been registered, or where the dog or a cat has been registered prior to the 30th of June 2024 and renewal is required. Somebody like to move? Councillor Bella moves, seconder. Councillor May. Councillor Bella.
I was fortunate to be appointed to the State Animal Management Dogs and Cats Task Force. I'll give you a little bit of a background on that first. We have 100,000 dog bites a year in this country, costing us about $7 million a year. We have 10 people a day throughout the country hospitalised, and of those 10 people, 7.5 are children. And this is where it comes into my previous experience as a physio working in the hospital system and rehab. Children are far more likely to be bitten on the face, throat, and have extensive tendon injuries, which can affect, and no, it doesn't can, which affects their whole life. So that's from a state point of view. The other thing I must say is that we are moving into line with other states where there are criminal charges, possibly ending up in a jail sentence for dog attacks and things like that. So to a certain extent, what we're doing is actually getting on the front foot, getting people to register their dogs. There has been data that shows that registered dogs are far more likely to be well trained, well cared for. The other thing, we can identify the dog that has attacked or whatever, whereas as our staff have found, when a dog is attacked, someone says it comes from this place, and the person says, no, we don't own a dog, what do? And I've got to say, some of the attacks are horrific. Now, yes, they happen with registered dogs as well, but they are less likely because those dogs are generally better trained, better looked after. The other thing is, there is an onus on the owner. They are then aware that they must have the dog controlled, well trained, well cared for. But let's talk about where we are in our own regard. We get 2,702 requests a year regarding dogs. 470 attacks a year, more than one a day. 397 strays, more strays than one a day. 260 barking dogs. 523 dogs and 233 cats end up in our animal management centre a year. Only half of those are registered. Now, the beauty of a registered dog or cat is the owner pays a much lower recovery fee, which doesn't even cover our time for having looked after it, but they go home. A lot of unregistered dogs, I would suggest, are left there because the owner says, well, it's not my dog, I don't want to pay the fee, and they're killed. Let's not use the term euthanasia, they're killed, ultimately. So this is about responsible dog ownership. From my point of view, my animals, I'd be glad if someone come in and said, hey, I want to look at your animals, see if they're okay. Because to be honest, I'd be proud to show them. And any decent person would take the same approach. This is not about you. This is about other people that you live in the community with, and this is about the welfare of these animals. It costs us $1.4 million a year to run the program. So if you are, or you have registered dogs, you are not only contributing to the $1.4 million for you, you're contributing to it for the people that don't pay. We're only funded through all of these for half of that. So basically, an elderly couple living in a unit with no dog or cat is actually funding the person who couldn't be bothered to register their dogs. We only have 15,000 registered dogs in this region, and we have 52 declared dangerous dogs. So how many other dangerous dogs are out there that we don't know about? How many other dogs get away with it because the person says, hey, it ran in my yard, but it's not my dog? And I'd say to you, if you were the person living next door to someone that lit a green fire every day, that smoked out your house, you'd want council to go in next door and do something about it, wouldn't you? Without this, we can't. As far as the dog. Interesting, I had a conversation over media with someone this morning who said they had a dog attack, blah, 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 council did nothing. I would suggest that maybe it's because we didn't have the power at that point. So, as I said, not about you. Why would we be bothered going to a house where we know there's registered dogs. Unless, of course, there's a report of, puppy farming in the background, in the backyard. However, people that are doing that are less likely to have the registered dog. So ultimately, this is common sense. Dogs aren't just fluffy friends to everyone. They're fluffy friends to some. And they can be quite a dangerous and deadly thing to other people. All this does is it gives our people the ability to go up and ensure people are being responsible. I don't think there's any of us, it's a mild noise, I don't think there's any of us that complain about being breath tested on the highway, because we realise that ultimately for the few they catch, it saves a lot of lives and stops some pretty bad behaviour. That is what this is. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Barrow. Speaker against. Councillor
Thank you, Mayor. Currently, our local law officers have the authority to visit properties to investigate a complaint made about an animal. When our staff knock on their door, they are visiting with a purpose to investigate a complaint. The type of inspection program that is being requested, I consider is going to be perceived by many in the community as an overreach. The purpose of this program is to raise our registration numbers and provide education to our community on animal registration. The money allocated to this 3-month inspection program could be used in a less invasive way to educate our community, in a way that could bring our community on a journey with us to increase our registration numbers, to create a positive response instead of a negative, potential hostile reaction from our community. The report says, under risk for workplace health and safety, that it is considered a low risk for our staff to implement this program. I question this, as I feel that if our community does not receive this inspection program well, that it potentially creates a high risk for our staff. And for my term of council, I look forward to supporting innovative ideas that positively engage and builds relationships with our community.
Thanks very much. Councillor Mackay, Speaker 4. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I don't think we want to overcomplicate this matter. We're simply saying here we're endorsing our officers to go out and check on dog registrations, check on making sure that people are doing the responsible pet ownership. It is by law, you have to register your dog and your cat. You're supposed to do that. So this is just a program we're going to go and check, firstly, by putting a notice in a letterbox. If the officers walk past the property and they see a dog there, they check their records, it's not on our records, here's a notification to say you've got a dog, you should register it. Then there's follow-up methods if that is not complied to. So it really is just about trying to get people to do the right thing, to do the thing that they're supposed to be doing. And to do that, we have to back the officers to be able to do their job. And that's simply what this is about.
Councillor May, Speaker against. Councillor Christensen.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So I have no problems with checking up to see whether or not people have dogs registered within our region. Of course, it is the local law. If you have a dog, if you have a cat, it must be registered. So that is that. I don't know that there is a correlation between dog registration and responsible ownership, because we have heard within this council that there are as many dogs that are actually picked up by our animal management services that are unregistered as there are registered. But nonetheless, it is the rule that you have to have them registered if they're in our local government area. But in terms of going and identifying homes where we may have had complaints where there are dogs, there is no need for approval of an inspection program authorising entry as per section 113 of the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act 2008. So no need for us to approve that in order to put a notice in a letterbox. There's no need for that in terms of someone actually knocking on a door. That is everyone's right to knock on a door. And after that, if someone is abusive, someone clearly has an unregistered dog, council could issue a formal legal notice actually saying we know that you have a dog that is unregistered, and there might be penalties that will apply if you don't get them registered within a due time frame. So I don't know that any of that would actually require us authorising this inspection program as per section 113 of the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act 2008. My concern is that I was on a council previously where we actually did this, and there were complaints from members of the public about finding council officers in their backyard. Now, I take it from the director that that is not going to happen, because what we are giving here is for the right for that to happen, when actually what we've heard are measures that we're going to put in place that don't need that to happen. So that's my concern with this, Your Worship. I don't want to put our officers in harm's way. You know, they might see the dog, they might think, well, I can go around and take a photo. That dog could be dangerous, the owner could be dangerous. Who knows? It'd be best for that conflict not to actually happen. So that's my concern. I don't think that for a low-level inspection program we need this, but the need for it is when you want to actually enter someone's yard.
Thanks, Councillor Christensen. Speaker 4. Are there any other speakers? We'll sum up, Councillor Ballard.
First of all, just to reply to Councillor Mackay, stated that council officers can go where there's an offence has occurred. In actual fact, not registering your dog is. Therefore, yes, we should be able to. So, yeah, all this is doing is actually backing up our staff and showing our commitment to them in the pursuit of a very, very difficult process. Would you not think it would be better to be proactive, to try and identify dogs, make sure they're okay and whatever, before they end up, and this goes to the 50% in the pound, I would suggest that, as I said, the vast majority of dogs that are killed in the pound are dogs that are unregistered because people don't come and pick them up as much as registered dogs. I would hate to see the actual charge increase further, because that would see even more dogs being killed. I would like to do it at the bottom end, make sure people register, make sure they de-sex their dogs, the whole show, and then if the dog does stray, it's a lot less to get your dog back. Okay? Education programs, and I acknowledge Councillor Mackay's inexperience, have been tried again. So unless we have, and there's been greater minds than mine that have worked on these education programs, we have basically offered a truckload of carrots and it hasn't worked, so now it's time to actually be a little bit more direct. And I'd say, what is wrong with getting a letter in your mailbox, which is the first step? What is wrong with that? It's when people don't respond to that. And that to me is a bit like the person driving on the highway, here's the police car behind them and keeps going. That in itself. The other issue that people may not be aware of is the vacating of dogs. So we've had this happen on any number of occasions where a dog has attacked or whatever. So what the person does is sends the dog out to their cousin's place out the farm somewhere. Our people try and inspect. Accordingly, there's no dog registered on the place. They wait 3 months, the dog comes back, and then they subsequently attack someone. So these are the sort of things. All we are asking for is for people to be responsible. We have tried one way, we're now going to try another. But just another thing, Councillor Christensen talks about, years ago, receiving complaints about council officers being in the backyard. As stated earlier, 13 other councils have this in place currently, minimum of 13. They're the ones we could get. Have we seen any vast amount of media on council officers stepping over the mark? We haven't, because it doesn't happen. It is not in council's officers or the council itself's interests to do that sort of thing. It is just to get the dog registered, and that's good for the dog.
Thanks, Councillor Ballard. So the motion is that in accordance with the Animal Management Cats and Dogs Act of 2006 and the LGA Act of 2009, Council approves 2 systematic inspection programs to be undertaken between 1 October and the 31st of December for all properties within the Mackay Regional Council area where a dog or a cat has not been registered, or where the dog or a cat has been registered prior to the 30th of June and a renewal for the dog or cat has not yet been received. Those in favour? Those against? Hang on, I'll put that again. Those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion is carried. Thank you. 6-5. All right, 11.4.1. Response to petition shade structures for the Blue Water Quay. So do we need any further discussion on this? Response to any questions? Councillor, questions?
Your worship, just for the public consumption, I guess, while it's in the report, could the EXO just detail why council has come to the conclusion that it has come to in relation to this petition request?
That's right, I wanted to defer to the Director.
Director?
Sorry, what was the question?
Why do we come to this conclusion?
Why has the officer's recommendation come to the conclusion it's come to in relation to the petition request?
Yes, Your Worship, the temporary shade structures is not ideal for the property, and it's also against the council policy not to have temporary structures. But any structure in that area won't be ideal given the use of the property itself and for large events. There are other grant opportunities that could be undertaken where they could get their own shade for that specific area.
Other questions? Somebody like to move the officer's recommendation be adopted? Councillor Hassan moves, Councillor May seconds. Councillor Hassan?
The officers just.
All right, I'll put that motion then. Those,
Your Worship, I'd like to speak against.
you will speak against, okay?
Thank you. Shade on various facilities around Mackay is certainly a concern for me, and I do understand that this space does have multiple uses. And to put something fixed in this location would hamper these uses in the area at different times of the year. Markets are the regular community events for our community to attend. As a regular myself, I know how hot this space can be, and in the afternoons, not only for stall holders but also for our families that are sitting on the grass trying to enjoy the space. So I will be voting against this, Your Worship.
Okay. Are there other speakers? No other speakers? Then I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Those against? 2 against. Thank you. The motion is carried. 11.4.2, the facilitating development of private involvement for material change of use. So the MCU for multiple dwellings, 4 units at 269 Levo Road. Director, is there anything further you need to add to this? Director.
Sorry.
Is there anything further you need to add to this one? It's fairly straightforward report.
It's pretty straightforward.
Other questions? No questions? Would somebody like to move the report's adoption? Councillor Hassan moves, Councillor May seconds. Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Worship. Just very briefly, the report's very comprehensive. Clearly, there are significant housing issues in our region, so any development that improves the availability of housing should be supported. I'm very happy to support this report.
Thank you. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. 11.4.3, Creedys Creek Catchment and Baseline Flood and Stormwater Assessment Study. This is the one that crashed the internet. All those overlays. And thank you to our Minutes Secretary for pursuing that. Anyway, we'll do that offline in future. That's a good lesson learned. Are there questions around this study? Huge study. Councillor Sheedy has a question.
Yeah, Your Worship, look, and it is a huge study, but personally, I feel that it's just asking a bit much to adopt this at such short notice without the opportunity for inspection and just a bit more information for councillors. That's me, that's my position.
What sort of information do you want?
Well, I'd like to actually, like the report refers to how the model assesses flooding impacts, and I'd like to sort of just understand that by a visit on the ground to some of those key sites and observe what the model is predicting, to get a better appreciation of it. So for me, I'd like to see the report received, but I just think that we need a bit more understanding of it before complete adoption. That's me.
Well, by adopting a report or receiving the report, same thing.
I don't know that it is the same. Adopting it is where we're standing behind it in every respect, and maybe that's where we'll finish up. But
and after that happens, then we can do an on-the-ground inspection, whatever you want. But this has been a long time in the making, and this is the experts in the game giving us the understanding, or their understanding, from their expertise about what we need to do in terms of the overlay for flood mapping in the area, simply by councillors going down and seeing on the ground what the effect might be. You can see that in this document, Councillor Shannon.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm a new councillor. I got the agenda on Friday. And it's asking me to adopt it, and I'm just saying that I can appreciate that it's got a lot of work in it, and it's got a lot of value, but I'd rather hasten a little bit less and move to receive it and adopt it next step.
Exactly.
Through your worship, obviously this is a very technical report. I'm just looking at the executive manager from strategic planning who's all across this, and maybe it might be worth getting him to explain some of the background about how this report came about, because again, by very virtue of the size of the report, it's a very complex and technical matter.
Okay. Acting Director.
Your Worship, yes, there was a lot of information gathered as part of building the study and the model, including significant amount of underground surveys, the contours, which is the LiDAR, stakeholder meetings, and also in engagement, where we used the information that the community gave us to help calibrate the model. On finishing off the model, that was subject to a peer review through RPEQ registered engineers, and it's also signed off by the engineering company, which is also registered engineers. We've also provided the draft outcomes of the study to the local developers in that specific catchment and their consultants, to check it against their understanding of how they see flooding in that area. So from the technical perspective, I think it's been thoroughly checked. The adoption of the study allows the information to flow through council systems on the website, on the mapping, also our flood inquiry online tool. And then the next step is the minor amendment to get it into the planning scheme. As part of that process, council is required to do community engagement. We need to let all the residents know. So as part of that process, we will brief council about the study itself and also the engagement process that will happen as part of that process.
Councillor Sheedy.
Just a question, Your Worship, to the Director. So the modelling has been distributed. The data is all there for, as you said, the consultants and what have you for potential developers. Any feedback from that? Is that generally endorsing or favouring? Favourable feedback from that?
Your Worship, we've given it to the existing developers and their consultants, or actually one particular consultant that checked it against their understanding. Developers are keen for this to be adopted as some of the information that's currently out there is outdated. So some of the areas have been filled. When residents or potential residents want to purchase those properties, it looks like it is still flooding because that's the information we currently have out there. So by adopting this, that information will be updated and the latest information will be available.
I think you've got to understand that exactly as the acting director said, what's on the system now, if you're going to buy a house in any area or going to develop in any area, and you have a look at our system now, the half a dozen developers that I've had in my office this year complaining about our outdated flood mapping system. It just prevents their development from going ahead because nobody's interested, because it says on our system, in the hatched or the pink or whatever it's there, that it's a flood area. And we know it's not. So this is a really important document to get out into the area, into the development area, to make sure that we have the latest information, not the outdated information that's on our system at the moment, actually prohibiting the sale of that land for development. So that's been the greatest complaint that I've heard this year about, particularly the land that we're talking about in this particular area. This document, by adopting this for council, allows us, as the acting director said, to get that out into the development zones that allows a much more up-to-date assessment of what it would be to live in that area, rather than it's going to flood. Okay, Councillor Bella.
Look, I would draw attention to the fact that the sooner we do this, the better, and that it would definitely have or provide some impetus for any conversations we have with regard to insurance. Things have definitely changed, as stated in the report, where there's been fill put in there. And I would say that this has been done by qualified people under best practice processes. Any delay that then leads to any form of impact on anyone could actually place this council and individuals in a very uncomfortable legal position unless they can validate, and I would say it'd be very difficult to validate unless you have equivalent or greater qualifications than the organisation that has done the report.
Councillor Bell, question? Right.
Yeah, I think you've partly answered one of my questions. I had a couple. How often these flood assessments have been done? And two, do they feed into the our emergency action plan that we get given by council? Is that where these flood maps then go into that to provide that current information to the public?
Yes, well, once we get it adopted, Councillor Mackay, then it starts going through the system, and it will eventually end up of course, in our LDMG's emergency evacuation plan. But we have to have the most up to date in our systems, and we don't at the moment.
So when was the last one done?
Acting Director.
Bishop, we've got an ongoing program of flood studies, depending on priority and number of people potentially affected. This is the latest one. We are busy with a new one now again as well. So every year or every couple of years we take a new catchment and we develop that.
The last one for this one would be 10 years old?
Yes, so this one, it is a larger catchment, so some parts of that catchments have been done about 3 or 4 years, so Anna Grove, Beaconsfield, those kind of areas was done. This is now a larger catchment. Some of those, there was a Macready's Creek, a previous Macready's Creek flood study that was done probably about 10 years ago, but there's also parts that actually is not covered by a flood study.
Just in reference to Councillor Sheedy, can I just request that to help alleviate, I guess, all these questions and to help move things through quicker, if there is studies like this that are out there pending, I appreciate we're going to get a briefing in the future on it, but if we could have the briefing, that way we hash it out and then know what we're receiving. Because we are new and these things have been going on a long time, but we're unaware of that happening.
Noted. Councillor Christensen.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, the two questions. While I note that there is a significant amount of information under the study development, I guess the one thing that I'm wanting to understand is, was the study done through simply a desktop model, or was the study done informed by actual events that we've had and on the ground hydrological assessments?
I can't answer that. I think the acting director will.
Yes, so all the previous events that we have information available is actually included to help calibrate the model, including the 2008 flood event that we had, and another big one that impacted this area specifically was the part of the Cyclone Debbie rainfall event, which also quite had a significant impact. So that, and as I mentioned earlier, the community engagement, we actually received photos as part of the events that they had, and we were able to use that to help pinpoint levels, and that helped to calibrate the model as well.
The second question, Your Worship, just probably digs a bit deeper than Councillor Sheedy's, and that is in the initial response to this that we've had from developers and or their consultants, has there been any dispute over the findings or or what's contained in this report?
From my experience, they're absolutely sweating on this report, but I'll let the acting director answer.
Yes, Your Worship. Keep in mind this is a baseline study, so it was about, is this the current understanding from the developers, and there was no dispute about the baseline study. That following from this, there will be further work about, all right, well, what does the baseline study mean? Are there things that we can help to mitigate the existing floods? And that will be ongoing conversations with everybody involved in that process.
Further questions? No further questions? The Macready's Creek Catchment Baseline Flood and Stormwater Assessment Study. So the officer's recommendation is included in 3 parts or 4 parts. The council adopt the assessment study. The council commenced the preparation of an amendment to the Mackay Regional Planning Scheme to incorporate the flood study hazards from the Macready Creek Catchment Baseline Flood and Stormwater Assessment Study, and that the flood study data be used in council's flood hazard and emergency management systems and provide that to the Insurance Council of Australia, and further that the study and the mapping outputs are published on council's website, web page and My Maps. Would you like to move? Councillor Jones moves, Councillor Hassan seconds, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the acting director has already said about the fact that we have these studies and they're ongoing. We're doing them all over the Mackay region. That's because Mackay is on a floodplain. So we need to make sure that it's our obligation as councils around this table to make sure that this community has the most up-to-date data. This particular study, within its catchment, 8,300 houses and 55 commercial properties exist. Most of that information, that's been obtained, the modelling's been done, the predictions are there now to be able to inform the future. The future means our planning scheme, and this is, it's been a huge amount of work for our officers. It's taken years to be able to get this together, and if this is the second largest study, then just remember there's been one bigger than this. So they will be ongoing. We'll continue to do this. The community living in this area were consulted, whether it be through letterbox drops and the online campaign. And I know that the conversations of understanding what this means for those people in that area, I know that that's been, addressed with the officers. So all I can really say is that this is a job well done for our staff. And the work that's been achieved, and I'm in support of receiving this today.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones, speaker against. Councillor Sheedy, speaking against.
Your Worship, and
you're speaking against, Councillor Sheedy?
Yes, Your Worship,
you need to stand up if you're speaking against.
Sorry. Your Worship, and my reservation is just what I've explained previously, that I'd have been keen to, to have been taken around the catchment, any time since I've been elected, but, you know, it's obviously, I appreciate that there's a lot of work has gone into it, and I'm not against it from that point of view, but it's just that I feel that as a new councillor, I'd like to be more, you know, better informed about what it means on the ground. It is a big report, and for me, it's been a lot to try to digest in the few days that I've had the report, and that's why I won't be voting for it, but that's me. Thank you.
Speaker 4, Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Worship. Agreeing with everything that Councillor Jones has previously said, I think it was really important to recognise that the response from the Director that we previously received, there is no issue with having a briefing, there is no issue with touring around these areas. None of that will change the outcome of the report. This is a specialist report done by specialist engineers. As you said, there's developers waiting for the outcome of this report. It's important for this to be there for our emergency action plans, for our development plans going forward. So regardless of whether further consultation with councillors is done, it's not going to change the outcome of this report. So to me, it's extremely important that we adopt this report.
Thank you. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers?
Yep.
Might constitute a card. Alright. Any other speakers? Councillor May speaking for.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Look, I'd just like to really thank the staff. This report and the study has been undertaken over a long period of time. We don't normally have studies that transform over one term of council to another. It is pretty unique, and unfortunately when newly elected councillors come in, because we have been briefed many times along the way of the updating of this report to get to this stage. But as Councillor Hassan said, we can go and look and we can have other briefings, but you're not going to change the data in the report. The specialist report, they were engaged because they're specialists in this area. You, me and people that sit around this table, it's not in our skill set to actually understand or know this stuff. So we must take after the scrutiny of our officers, we must take the recommendations of the officers to adopt this report, because it is vital to the development of our region. And the catchment being so big, we don't want to hold anybody up. So it's really important. We've got the data now. Let's get it out there. Let's circulate it. And let's amend our planning scheme to be able to make sure that we're doing development in the right place.
Thanks, Councillor May. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers? Then I'll put that motion. There's 5 parts to it as I read out before. Sorry, 4 parts as I read out before. Those in favour? Any against? None against. Thank you. The motion is carried. All right, let's move on. 11.4.4. You okay? Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. Well done. The Excel is really sweating that he'd have to take the minutes.
Sorry.
Okay. 11.4.4, it's a MCU for a function facility at 267 Barry Lane at Homebush. Are there questions around this one? Director, is there, do you have a question, Councillor Christensen?
Yes, there's been noise in recent days about helicopter landings at this facility. Homebush residents have contacted me and said that they're concerned about it, but just wanting to be clear that that does not form part of the submission, and without it forming part of the submission, that will not be able to happen on a regular occurrence.
Director, Acting Director.
Your Worship, yep, there was the applicant did allow a helicopter landing there several years ago, but that's certainly not the intent as an ongoing use of the site.
The way I read it, it turned up on their Facebook memory. Correct. So there's no intent of it becoming a helicopter landing zone. Councillor Bella, question?
Well, that's not exactly correct, because they're currently working with Mackay Tourism in that regard, as the reply I received says. There is an intent to investigate it. What I would ask is whether they will be given the same leeway next time as this time, where they go and start and then later on apply for it. Or are we going to be more proactive in this and actually police it? So,
So Director, then can you just expand on that?
I mean, Worship, that we've been in contact with the applicant about that issue. So yes, it was a Facebook memory that was just reshared. So that must be why it looks like it's recent, but it's been several years ago. But the applicant have informed us that they have no intent to allow it, as at least as a general use. And if there is anything specific, then it will need to follow the processes as part of that.
All right, further questions? No further questions? The MCU for function facility at 267. Would like to move. Councillor Jones moves, seconded by Councillor Johnson. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. I just think that while this has had a bit of a lengthy process, that it's a great outcome for the applicant and the community. As council have they've worked collaboratively with the landowner, and yeah, I think it'll be good.
Thank you very much. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put that motion in. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.5, the infrastructure and operations. 11.5.1, the lease to Mackay Regional Housing Company. Shop 12 in the Dome. I think that's pretty well straightforward. Exo, is anything further on that? Anything further from the directors? No? Something like, are there questions? Somebody like to move? Councillor Christensen moves, second by Councillor Hassan. Councillor Christensen.
No question.
Okay. Any debate? I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.5.2, the new lease for 122 Regional Army Cadet Unit Support Group. This is once again pretty well straightforward. Are there any questions? Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, second by Councillor Christensen. Councillor May. Pretty well straightforward. Any debate? I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. 11.5.3, the lease for the sublease for the Mackay Wanderers Football Club in the Northern Suburbs Cricket Club and the Northern Suburbs Junior Rugby League altogether. Are there questions around this one? No questions. Somebody like to move? Councillor McRae moves. Councillor Payton seconds. Councillor McRae.
So that's straightforward.
Okay, I'll put that motion then if there's no debate. Put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. And 5.4, a lease renewal for Vivid Horizons Proprietary Limited, which is the Hibiscus Pharmacy. Any questions around this one? Very well straightforward. Somebody like to move? Councillor Jones moves, second by Councillor Sheedy. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Just briefly wanted to say that you know, it's pleasing to see that the pharmacy is still out there in the community, and it was just one of those out-of-the-box ideas that has certainly helped support a rural community, so it's good to see.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Speaker against? Any other speakers? I'll put that motion. Those in favour? Any against? The motion's carried unanimously. 5.5, the response to a petition for the provision of a bus shelter in Primavera Boulevard. Oh, that's right, you had a conflict in this one. So Councillor Hassan's declared a conflict and will step out for the discussion on this. Thanks, Councillor Hassan. Right, questions? Other questions? No questions? Would somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Bella moves. Is there a seconder? Take it there's an alternative motion here. If there's no seconder, this will lapse for the want of no seconder, and we'll put up an alternative motion. Have we got the alternative motion?
It's lapsed.
It's lapsed. So the alternative motion is the council commits to construction of the Primavera Boulevard bus shelter with the design in 25-26 and construction in 26-27 financial years you're talking about, and that the additional budget allocation, an estimated total cost of $365,000 be allocated to support this project. Can we actually have a motion that commits a budget prior to its being implemented?
Your Worship, I think what that is an indication that you're bringing into that. At the end of the day, the budget would need to be adopted in that year, but it's a commitment, I suppose. Unless the director's got a different view in relation to that from a budgeting point of view.
Director?
No, I've got nothing to add.
Nothing to add. It's a little bit odd that we actually can allocate a budget allocation prior to the budget even being considered. I have no problem with the first line of that motion that council commits to the construction and promotion of the bus shelter with design in the 25-26 and construction in 26-27, and that a budget allocation be debated at the next budget.
Can we just add maybe the words be considered?
Be considered, yeah. I don't think we can actually commit a budget right now prior to a budget being actually on the table.
Happy with that, Your Worship.
Councillor Bell?
I do have a question in regard to that. I only received the notified motion this morning and immediately sent an email asking for a couple of details. For a long time we've operated, and I have made no denials that this is a worthy cause, but we have any number of worthy causes of the same nature right throughout. And as I've said, council is like trying to plug 6 holes with 5 fingers financially. And I asked the proposer of the alternate motion what analysis framework, what project was going to miss out. Did it mean that other school bus shelters and that missed out for a couple of years, and I've yet received any response. So I maintain that if I receive this at the last moment, I would like to see that framework to be able to see whether this was, in fact, I do not deny it's a worthy cause, but is it in fact the most worthy cause we have? Or is this purely a partial decision? Because I think partial decisions can be called into question. We need to know what sort of impartial and objective analysis was done as to the requirement for this over the others.
I don't think
I'm asking that of Councillor Jones, yes.
Let me jump in here. I don't think we can actually have an impartial decision-making process around this. This is the council saying we want to commit to building a bus shelter as a priority. The budget allocation around it, what drops off, etc.
My question is, how did we decide this as a priority? What was the framework?
Well, the council is going to decide it right now if it's a priority or not. If it's a priority, this motion gets up. If it's not a priority, this motion is defeated.
So it's made on how we feel about it rather than we have so many people here, they wait for so long, and actually contrast and compare that to the others. As I said, this is purely subjective.
What you're saying, Councillor Bella, but this is a motion to determine a priority before council.
Well, can I highlight then that this is the case and that other, in the making of this decision, other bus shelters will be ignored?
Well, you might do that in speaking against the motion. But right now, I'd like to see, we can't commit a budget allocation and that an additional budget allocation be considered. You happy with that? To support this project. But we don't even know it's going to be a total cost yet. We don't even know what that total cost is going to be.
That was the estimate.
But we're going to put it off next year, that's not going to be the estimate. All right? So, and the additional budget allocation be considered to support this project. Happy with that, Lisa? You got that? Not 365,000. Just take the dollars out. Okay. It'll come back way above that in 12 months' time. Okay? And then further, the principal petition will be advised of these actions. All right, you happy with that? If there's no further questions, can I have a seconder? Councillor Christensen seconds. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. Having a bus stop to protect the elderly from the elements is aligned with our corporate plan, and it sits under the community environment section where we say that we want a safe and healthy region. We also state in our corporate plan, our region is safe when we support community with services that are of a high standard of public health, and we support each other through both good and challenging times. This is a challenging time for the elderly in our community. This is a long-standing community need that has been ignored for over 20 years, and despite a previous commitment by a local council to deliver this shelter, the elderly residents of Eaglemount Retirement Village rely on this service, often standing in the heat or the rain without protection. This is about dignity and safety, especially for those with mobility issues, and additionally residents from the nearby Miraflora estate, which was built a decade ago, have indicated that they would also use this bus service more if there was a shelter provided within the wider community. Council's corporate plan highlights our commitment as I've said, yet it remains underserved while similar retirement villages in Angrove and Beaconsfield have nearby shelters. Replacing existing shelters purely to meet DDA requirements should not take priority when some elderly residents and in our region have no shelter at all. Prioritising this project in 2025 to 26 financial year allows for responsible budgeting while addressing an urgent need. This motion not only meets the practical needs of the community but also honours past commitments, aligns with our core values and ensures fairness across our services. Given the added local population and the nearby projects that receive funding for similar purposes, it is time to finally deliver on this long overdue project. I propose the construction of this bus shelter, designing in 25-26 and delivery 26-27. And the reasons why, as per the section of 254H of the Local Government Regulation 2012R, that this does not impact our current budget. Theoretically, if council has a list of bus shelters required to be built for vulnerable people in our community, like school students, then why are elderly people not included as vulnerable on the CAPEX program? Our older generations cannot walk uphill for long distances to get to bus stops, and there are other bus stops nearby, like I suggested. So it is morally wrong for this facility to miss out. And technically, the list of the bus shelters is incomplete and it needs to be reviewed and long-term more funding allocated. I put this forward to you, Your Worship.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. One of the things, if we go against an officer's recommendations, we have to justify it. And I consider what you've done there in your explanation is justification. Are you happy with that, Exa?
Yeah, Your Worship, we'll just record that accordingly.
Okay. Speaker against, Councillor Bell.
I should strongly challenge the premise of Councillor Jones's approach. She talks about, providing this for the elderly and that for the elderly. I'd like to just make aware that the elderly live in more places in our region than just in her particular bailiwick. They live all the way from down past me, all the way up to Midge Point and all the way out. We also have school children that when they're dropped off stand, that's in sometimes for quite a long time with no shelter whatsoever. I am not in any way saying this is not a worthy project. However, common sense would say that you would check to see whether this was the most important project. Is it the most elderly people? Are they the most impacted? All of those things. Now, if you do not apply that, what are you applying? And do we just become a council that acts ad hoc? Because quite conceivably, if this benefits 20, 30, 40, 50, there could be 60, 70, 80, 100 somewhere else. That analysis has not been done. This completely exhausts our program for over 2 years, the cost of this, as has been stated time and again. Once again, I am not saying it does not have merit, but does it have the most merit? And we have not established that, and it is irresponsible and partisan to not check. Thank you.
Councillor Bell, speaking for. Councillor Christensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd suggest it would be very responsible and perhaps irresponsible if you didn't go and meet with the residents there to have a look before making statements regarding the merit of this project.
Point of order.
What's your point of order, councillor Bell?
I never questioned the merit of the project. I stated a number of times it had merit.
All right.
I question where it has the most merit.
Okay, thanks very much. It's a marginal point of order, but just stick to that.
Thank you, Your Worship, and again questioning whether it has the most merit. Going and talking to the residents would be beneficial. In fact, I did this on Monday. I went and met with Jenny Hall, Desley Thorne and Annette Hicks, residents of Eaglemount Resort Retirement Village, and had a long discussion with them. We actually went and had a look at the proposed shelter location, and I got to witness firsthand the traffic movements and the traffic situation at that place. So I got to hear some detailed information from those residents as well. But one of the things that I've got a note that I'll come back to in a moment, that in witnessing multiple vehicles at that intersection, they slow down, often to a stop, before entering Primavera Boulevard. And once they've entered that boulevard, there is a clear line of sight for anyone who is crossing the road to any potential bus shelter. And, you know, I got to say, I think that it's actually a safe location for that. In fact, it's a location where some residents, there would be more if there was a shelter, but about 10 on and off, not every day, but regularly, 10 residents, I'm told, of this retirement village cross the road actually to hail the bus. And they're doing that quite safely now. So that's one point I'll come back to. The bus shelter here in this case is not just a convenience, it's a necessity. The elderly residents who've contributed to this community for years and continue to do so through their rates that are paid in their management fees rely on a bus getting to and from places. Without a shelter there, they're often left standing in the hot sun or in the rain, which is not only uncomfortable but potentially unsafe for those who are elderly. As Annette Hicks said to me, we're all getting older and we're all going to be wanting to use that. So there is a need. Desley Thorne also expressed a sentiment that truly resonates. Most of us have paid rates over many years and we feel that it's not something special. We're asking for something that a lot of other retirement villages have. And in fact, when we look at other retirement villages, there are bus shelters nearby, Your Worship. This shelter would also benefit others in the area. There are currently a number of school children who hail the public transport bus, even though it's not a school bus. They utilise that to get to school. Having a shelter for them would be an additional benefit for the residents of Miraflores Estate. And in fact, as has been said by Councillor Jones, there is anecdotal evidence that other residents of Miraflores Estate would use public transport more if there was indeed a shelter there. Council's corporate plan commits us to a safe, healthy and engaged region. However, this area remains underserved compared to similar retirement villages and throughout our region. Prioritising this project allows us to address a long-term overdue community need while managing our budget responsibly. And now going back to the traffic movements, I would strongly suggest, Your Worship, that the price tag, and I'm glad it's out of the original motion, because I think that it might be overkill. I think that there could be less expensive traffic mitigation options put in place, given what I observed there the other day. Cars can't simply roar around that corner. They'll end up in a fence if they do. Most of them stop, turn the corner, and then, as I said, there is clear line of sight. So in closing this motion, it's about fairness, it's about safety, it's about fulfilling a promise that was made, not just by our councillor, but you know, there have been things told to me by the residents the other day that there's been indications given of commitments from councils over the years. So it fulfills a promise made to those residents. I think it's time to deliver on that commitment and ensure that the elderly residents of Eaglemount Resort Retirement Village, along with the broader community there in Beaconsfield, have the protection and dignity that they deserve. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Christensen. Speaker 4. Against. That's right, against. Any other speakers? Councillor May, speaking for.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, I think this is not so much about jumping the queue, but this is about righting something that's been overlooked over many years. When we hear from the residents that, you know, first brought this to Council's attention 20 years ago and through whatever means has not made it to the capital project list. but it is about the health and well-being of our elderly residents in this particular area. And yes, there is other aged facilities and a lot of them do have their own bus stops and public transport options, but this one does not. And that's the one that we're dealing with today. So I think for a council to make a decision, not to be queue jumping, but to say this is a priority for our council. This is a priority because the people are wanting this to happen. They have been asking over many, many years, and now it's time for us to deliver. We can then go back and look at the bus shelters that are on the current program, and we may need to, as a council, make decisions around allocating further funds so that we can clear that backlog. Because quite frankly, to have a backlog with 50 odd bus shelters on it is just unrealistic. So I think we need to put a bit of thought into our future planning, our dollars that we allocate to bus shelters, but this one today is a priority and I support the motion.
Thanks, Councillor May. Any other speakers? Councillor Sheedy, you speaking for or against?
Yeah, for, Your Worship, and I just endorse what Councillor May said. I think it is time and well spoken. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sheedy. Any other speakers? Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Worship. I'll just reiterate what I said previously. Technically, the list of bus shelters is incomplete and it needs to be reviewed and long-term more funding allocated. This is the list Councillor May mentioned. I note on the list there's actually 2 bus shelters that have been cancelled. But I just want to close by saying, as this is not planned to be in this financial year, there are always opportunities between now and next year to lobby government for funding, and also our future budgets are very flexible. And sometimes we have projects that get deferred and some projects get axed out of a budget. So at the end of the day, everything's fluid, and because there's, it's been around for such a long time, I do submit this alternate motion for our councillors to consider as a priority on our bus shelter program.
No longer an alternate motion, this is the motion. And so the motion is, council commits to the construction in 26-27 with the design being done next financial year and the budget allocation being considered to support the project. Those in favour? Those against? None against. The motion is carried 10-1. Thank you. Right.
Councillor Hassan.
We better get Councillor Hassan.
I need to read That's 9.
That's 9-1, not 10-1, so it's all right. Right. Very good. 11.5.6, response to petition of Omeo Surf Lifesaving Club, the boom gate at the car park, with the officer's recommendation that the Omeo Beach car park access be left unrestricted and no permanent boom gates be installed. The Omeo Surf Lifesaving Club be requested to apply for a temporary closure permit to close the car park during high risk events. And the principal additionally advised of the council's decision. Any questions, Councillor Christensen?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wanting to check whether the motion indeed allows for the closure in advance of known events. So in other words, can they put in a request to council to say, we want to close it and here's our calendar and here are the dates that we want it closed, or does it have to be event by event?
Good question. I can't imagine why we wouldn't consider it on a yearly basis, Director.
Yeah, through Your Worship, it will be if they can select a number of dates. So, for example, with Nippers Day, they can give us those 4 dates and we'll give approval for those. It would be then any other events they wanted to hold outside of that might be a separate process. But if they've got a program in advance that's enough, they can commit to a number of dates that we will look at.
Excellent. Okay. Any other questions? No other questions? Somebody like to move? Councillor Jones moves, seconded by Councillor Patton. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Worship. After a thorough look at this with our community lens and bringing all the new councillors up to speed, we've ended up with a great outcome. Through communication and consultation, I feel that this is a result that Council and Omeo Surf Lifesaving Club can live with. So it's well done to all involved. It's a great outcome.
Yeah. Speaker against? Any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put that motion in. Those in favour? Any against? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. Response to petition improved Serena Aquatic Centre. And once again, this is fairly well straightforward. So that the officer's recommendation is the council confirms that no funds have been allocated in the 10-year LTFF, and the council confirms that the provision of an improved aquatic facility for Serena District is not supported by the regional aquatic strategy, and that further discussions occur with the principal petitioner to review how health and wellbeing outcomes could be further developed around the existing aquatic facility. Questions? Any questions? Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Jones. Councillor May.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, unfortunately, when the study was done, the supporting improved aquatic facilities in the Serena area was not seen as a priority. But I am very pleased to see that further discussions can occur between how health and wellbeing outcomes can be obtained within the existing facilities or something further to that. So I think it leaves the door open for options to be explored, and you know, the petitioner will be advised of that, and hopefully those discussions will take place.
Thanks very much, Councillor May. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? Councillor Christensen.
Your Worship, I wonder if I could move a procedural motion that the matter lay on the table pending a briefing on this matter.
Pending a briefing? The procedural motion is that the matter lay on the table pending a briefing. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Councillor Sheedy, go. No. Lays on the table. 11.5.8, stage 2 of the Resource Centre of Excellence. Once again, a comprehensive report. The officer's recommendation is that the council award the contract number 32, the Resources Centre of Excellence Stage 2, to Fergus Builders for the fixed lump sum, the tender price as mentioned there, and that council confirms the allocation of additional $575,000 in funds in the 25-26 financial year for the project, and further that council, in conjunction with the Resources Centre of Excellence, advocate for additional funds from the Australian and Queensland governments for consideration of tenancies to and the rear access, as well as for the enhanced facility scope for all 4 tenancies. So that's a fairly comprehensive direction, and I think it's we've had briefings on this, obviously, councillors. So, are there questions at all on this? No questions. Somebody like to move? Councillor May moves, seconded by Councillor Corowa. Councillor May.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. The officer's recommendation is fully supported from my point of view. I think this is a critical project for our region. If we want to position ourselves to be diversifying our industrial base here, this is a great project that will enable that. It's been a long time in the making. It's been well what would you say, explored and worked upon to be able to bring today the tender for the successful tenderer to actually start construction is a great step forward. And I think it's, like I said, it's one of the critical pieces to the puzzle of diversifying our economy going forward. So fully support the project.
Thanks very much, Councillor May. Speaker against? Are there any other speakers? No other speakers? I'll put that motion then. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. 11.6 now under corporate services. 6.1 is the budget review and the strategic financial report for July 2024. Director, are you doing this one?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The report has been briefed. It contains obviously the strategic financial report and also some commentary on some changes to fees and charges, which predominantly in the building and planning area my colleague can speak to. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Director. Are there questions? No questions. You got off lightly in your first one. There's no questions. I'll get someone to move the adoption of the report. Probably. Councillor Christensen moves. Somebody like to second? Councillor Hassan seconds. Councillor Christensen. I don't have anything. Okay. Is there any debate? No debate. I'll put that motion then. Those in favour? Any against? The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, we're up to receipt of petitions. No petition, oh yes, there is a petition for a sealing of Stotts Road at Racecourse under 12.1. The officer's recommendation, of course, all we can do here is receive it and refer it to the CEO for a report to come back to council. Somebody like to move? Councillor Christensen moves, seconded by Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Any against? Carried, thank you. There's no tenders, there's no notified motions, there's no public participation. Late business? No late business. There's confidential reports. There's only one, councillors. There's two, that's right, there is two. I'll take that back. Is there a need to move into a closed session of council to? No, okay. If there's no need to move in, we'll do 17.1, the Legal Services Monthly Report for August of 2024. Something like to move its adoption. Councillor May, seconded by Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Any against? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. At 17.2, the approved concessions under the Facilitating Development of the Mackay Region Policy for July 2024. Somebody like to move the adoption? Councillor Christensen, seconded by Councillor May. Those in favour? Those against? It's carried unanimously. All right, councillors, thank you very much. Thank you to the EXO and to our directors. I declare the meeting closed.